The sky over Seoul turned dark at exactly 3 in the afternoon. It was not clouds. It was not an eclipse. It was something that humanity had dreamed about and feared for thousands of years. A ship, larger than any building ever made, blocked out the sun. Kim Do-hyun was teaching his afternoon class when the shadow fell. 12 children, ages 7 to 12, stood frozen in the middle of their practice. Through the large windows of his small training hall in Busan, they could see people stopping in the streets. Cars pulled over. Shop owners came outside. Everyone looked up. "Teacher," a small girl whispered. "What is that?" Do-hyun did not answer immediately. He was 52 years old. He had seen many things in his life. He had served in the military for 15 years before an injury forced him to retire. He had lost his wife to illness 8 years ago. He had raised his daughter alone. He thought he understood fear. But looking at that ship, he realized he had never truly known it. "Go home," he said quietly. "Class is finished for today. Go to your families." The children did not argue. They grabbed their bags and ran. Do-hyun stood alone in his training hall, watching the sky. The wooden floor beneath his feet was smooth from decades of footsteps. The walls held simple decorations, old photographs, a few awards that meant nothing now. This was his entire world. Teaching children, honoring the old ways, living simply, that world was ending. The broadcasts began within the hour. Every television, every phone, every computer screen showed the same image. A woman, tall and strange, with skin the color of pale purple flowers. She had 4 arms, each one long and graceful. Her eyes were solid black, like polished stones. When she spoke, her voice was translated into every language on Earth. "People of this world," she said, "I am Commander Velia of the Arathi Empire. We have watched your species for some time. You have potential. You have resources. You have a planet that would serve our expansion well." She paused, and something like a smile crossed her alien face. "Our tradition is ancient and honorable. We do not simply conquer. We offer a choice. Send us your greatest warrior, one champion to face me in single combat. If your champion wins, we leave. Your world remains free. If your champion loses, your planet becomes territory of the Empire. You have 30 days to choose." The transmission ended. The world went mad. Do-hyun watched the chaos unfold from his small apartment above the training hall. His daughter, Sumin, called him 17 times before he finally answered. She was crying. "Father, did you see? Did you see what's happening?" "I saw. What are we going to do? What is anyone going to do?" Do-hyun looked out his window. In the street below, people were running, shouting, some praying. A car had crashed into a lamppost. Nobody was helping the driver. "We will wait," he said. "We will see what happens. Come home, Sumin. Be with family." Over the next few days, the world's governments argued. The United Nations held emergency meetings that lasted through the night. Military leaders from every country shared their best fighters. Athletes, soldiers, martial artists, anyone who might stand a chance. The Arathi allowed tests. They sent down training machines, robots that moved and fought like Commander Velia. These machines were programmed to fight at only 30% of her true ability. Every human who faced them lost within seconds. Do-hyun watched these tests on television. He saw Olympic wrestlers thrown like children. He saw Special Forces soldiers from America, Russia, China, and Korea knocked unconscious before they could react. He saw a famous fighter from Brazil, a man who had never lost a professional match, and break his arm in 3 places, trying to block a single strike. The alien machines were too fast, too strong, too perfect. "It's impossible," Sumin said, sitting beside her father. "No human can beat that." Do-hyun said nothing. He was watching the way the machines moved. There was a pattern. There was always a pattern. But seeing a pattern and being able to use it were very different things. The days passed. Hope faded. Some people suggested using weapons, but the Arathi rules were clear. The duel would be unarmed, traditional, honorable. Any attempt to cheat would result in immediate invasion. On the 12th day, a young woman in military uniform appeared at Do-hyun's training hall. She introduced herself as Lieutenant Yoon Ji-soo, a combat analyst for the Korean Armed Forces. Kim Do-hyun? She asked. Yes, I need to speak with you. It's about the selection. Do-hyun invited her inside. He made tea, as he always did for guests. Ji-soo seemed uncomfortable with the small courtesies. She wanted to get to business. I've been searching old military records, she explained. Classified files from decades ago. Your name came up. Do-hyun sipped his tea. That was a long time ago. Nanderzon, Nanterzon, Nanderzon, Nanterzon. The Taebak incident. 1994. You held a defensive position for 18 hours against a force of 47 enemy combatants. You ran out of ammunition in the first 2 hours. You continued with only a knife. She paused. 31 confirmed casualties, all from blade wounds. Like I said, a long time ago. Ji-soo leaned forward. The selection committee has tested over 2,000 candidates. The best fighters in the world. None of them lasted more than 8 seconds against the training machines. She pulled out a tablet, showing him footage. But we noticed something. The fighters who lasted longest weren't the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who could adapt, who could take damage and keep thinking, who didn't panic. Do-hyun set down his cup. I am 52 years old, Lieutenant. I have bad knees. My shoulder aches when it rains. I teach children how to punch. You also survived something that should have killed you. And you did it by outlasting an enemy that had every advantage. Ji-soo met his eyes. We're not looking for someone who can win in the first minute. We're looking for someone who can survive long enough to find a way. Suman appeared in the doorway. She had been listening. Father. No. Do-hyun looked at his daughter. She was 30 years old now, but in that moment, she looked like the frightened child he had comforted after her mother's funeral. If I don't try, he said slowly, and they take our world, what kind of world will that be? For the children I teach? For you? For your children someday? Suman began to cry. Do-hyun turned back to Lieutenant Ji-soo. When do we begin? The lieutenant smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had found what they were looking for and knew the cost of finding it. Tomorrow, she said. We have 18 days to prepare you for the impossible. That night, Do-hyun sat alone in his training hall. The floor was cold beneath him. The shadows were long. He thought about his wife, buried in the cemetery on the hill. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the 12 children who came to his class every week, trusting him to teach them how to be strong. He closed his eyes and began to breathe. The way his grandfather had taught him 60 years ago. In 18 days, he would face a god. He intended to make her bleed. The training began before sunrise. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-soo arrived at the training hall with a team of specialists. There were doctors, nutritionists, combat experts, and scientists who studied human performance. They filled the small building with equipment and computers. Do-hyun stood in the center of it all, feeling like a fish being studied in a tank. We need baseline measurements, one of the doctors explained. Heart rate, reaction time, pain tolerance, endurance limits. We need to know exactly what we're working with. The tests lasted 3 days. They put sensors on his body. They made him run until he collapsed. They made him hold his breath underwater. They made him endure cold, heat, and electric shocks to measure how much pain he could handle before his performance dropped. Ji-soo watched everything with her tablet, taking notes. On the 3rd night, she sat with Do-hyun in his small kitchen. He was exhausted, but he made tea for her anyway. His hands shook slightly as he poured. The results are interesting, she said carefully. Interesting good or interesting bad? Jisoo hesitated. Your raw physical abilities are above average for your age, but far below what we've seen from younger candidates. Your speed is maybe 60% of what Commander Velya can do. Your strength is even less. Do-hyun nodded. He had expected this. But, Jisoo continued, your pain tolerance is in the top 1% of all humans ever recorded. Your recovery rate between efforts is exceptional. And there's something else. She showed him a graph on her tablet. Most fighters, when they get hurt, their performance drops immediately. Yours doesn't. You actually get more efficient when you're damaged. Your movements become simpler, more direct. It's like your body removes everything unnecessary and focuses only on what matters. My grandfather called it becoming water, Do-hyun said. When the container breaks, water doesn't stop. It finds a new path. Jisoo put down her tablet. I need to be honest with you. The committee is not happy that I found you. They wanted someone younger, someone more impressive for the cameras. The world is watching. They wanted a hero who looks like a hero. And I look like a tired old man. You look like someone's grandfather. Jisoo almost smiled. But I've studied every fight recording we have of Commander Velya. 14 duels across 7 star systems. She has never faced an opponent who lasted more than 4 minutes. She's used to winning quickly. She's used to overwhelming force. Do-hyun understood. You think she doesn't know how to fight long. I think she's never had to learn. Her species lives for 300 years. They have 4 arms. They're faster and stronger than almost anything in the galaxy. Why would she ever need to develop endurance? The next morning, real training began. Jisoo brought in fighters from across Korea. Special forces soldiers, martial arts champions, street fighters with no formal training but decades of real experience. Do-hyun sparred with all of them. He lost. Again and again, he lost. The young soldiers took him down with speed. The martial artists found holes in his defense. The street fighters surprised him with tricks he hadn't seen before. By the end of each day, Do-hyun was covered in bruises. His body screamed for rest. He did not complain. He did not ask for breaks. He simply stood up and continued. Suman came to watch on the 5th day of training. She sat in the corner of the training hall, her face pale. She had not slept well since her father accepted this mission. Every night, she dreamed of the alien woman breaking him apart. Father, she said during a water break, you're getting hurt too much. This isn't working. Do-hyun wiped blood from his lip. I'm learning. Learning what? How to fall down. He smiled, and even through the bruises, it was a warm smile. I'm learning what doesn't work. Every fall teaches me something. Every hit shows me a mistake I won't make again. But you don't have time for this. There are only 13 days left. Do-hyun put his hand on her shoulder. I spent 30 years teaching children. You know what I've learned? The ones who improve fastest are not the talented ones. They're the ones who are willing to look foolish. The ones who don't protect their pride. He turned back to the training floor. I stopped protecting my pride a long time ago. The days blurred together. Do-hyun's body began to change. Not in the way the doctors expected. He did not become stronger or faster. Instead, he became simpler. His movements shed unnecessary motion. His breathing became deeper and more controlled. He learned to relax, even when being attacked. Jisoo noticed something else. The sparring partners who fought Do-hyun every day were growing frustrated. At first, they had taken him down easily. Now, it was taking longer. Not because he was winning, but because he was lasting. He absorbed punishment that would have stopped anyone else. He kept coming forward, no matter how many times they knocked him down. On the 10th day, one of the Special Forces soldiers threw his gloves on the ground after a sparring session. It's like hitting a ghost, he said, breathing hard. I know I'm hurting him. I can see the damage. But he doesn't react. He doesn't slow down. It's not natural. Jisoo recorded everything. She sent reports to the selection committee. They were still not convinced. On the 12th day, a general from the United Nations delegation visited the training hall. He was a tall American man with a hard face and harder eyes. He watched Do-hyun spar for an hour, without saying a word. Afterward, he approached Jisoo. "This is our best option?" "This old man?" Jisoo stood straight. "He can barely touch his opponents. He doesn't need to touch them often, sir. He needs to touch them once, at the right moment, after they're exhausted." The general shook his head. "Commander Velia will kill him in the first 30 seconds. "Maybe," Jisoo said. "But I don't think she'll be able to keep him down. And I think that will scare her more than any punch ever could." The general looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Do-hyun, who was sitting on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slowly, despite the blood on his training clothes. "If he dies, it will be on camera. The whole world will see humanity lose. The whole galaxy will see us as weak." Jisoo did not look away. "If he dies fighting, sir, the galaxy will see that we don't know how to give up. That might be worth more than winning." Quote, the general left without approving or rejecting the selection. But the next morning, the official announcement came. Kim Do-hyun would represent Earth. The news spread across the planet. People searched for information about him. They found almost nothing. A retired soldier, a martial arts teacher, a widower, a father. Reporters surrounded his training hall. They shouted questions through the windows. Do-hyun ignored them. He had 6 days left. He could not waste time on words. That night, Sumin helped him ice his wounds. Her hands were gentle, but shaking. "I'm proud of you, father," she said quietly. Do-hyun looked at her. "Don't be proud yet. Pride comes after. After you win?" He shook his head slowly. "After I give everything. Winning or losing. That's for the universe to decide. But giving everything, that's for me to decide. That's the only thing I can control." Sumin hugged him carefully, avoiding the worst of the bruises. "Then I'm proud of what you've decided," she whispered. Outside, the sky was dark. Somewhere above the clouds, Commander Velia waited in her ship, preparing her own body for the duel. She had won 14 times before. She expected to win again. She had never fought a human before. She had never fought someone who had already decided that dying didn't matter, as long as he died standing. Commander Velia invited the human journalists to her ship. It was a calculated move. She wanted them to see her train. She wanted them to carry images back to their world, images that would fill human hearts with fear and surrender before the duel even began. Hope was the enemy of quick conquest. She intended to kill hope first. The journalists walked through corridors of metal and light. They passed Arathi soldiers who stood 7 feet tall, their 4 arms folded in perfect military discipline. They passed windows that showed Earth below, blue and green and fragile. Then, they reached the training chamber. Velia stood in the center, wearing only simple fighting clothes. Her violet skin gleamed under harsh lights. Her black eyes reflected nothing. She was beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. All power and danger and the promise of swift death. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "I understand you wish to see how I prepare for your champion." A journalist from Japan raised his camera. "Commander, are you confident you will win?" Velia smiled. It was not a human smile. There was no warmth in it. "Let me show you something." She walked to a block of reinforced steel, 2 meters thick. This was the same material used in human military bunkers. It could stop tank shells. It could survive explosions. Velia struck it with her bare hand. The block shattered. Fragments flew across the room. The journalists screamed and ducked. When they looked up, Velia was standing calmly, her hand unmarked. "Your champion is an old man," she said. "I have studied him. Kim Do-hyun, 52 years old. No special genetic modifications. No technological enhancements. Just flesh and bone and a few decades of training. She walked closer to the journalists. Close enough that they could see the fine scales hidden beneath her skin. The subtle signs of her alien biology. I have fought 14 times for the Empire. I have never lost. My shortest victory was 11 seconds. My longest was 4 minutes. She tilted her head. How long do you think your champion will last? The journalist from Japan asked quietly. What is your prediction? Velia laughed. It was a strange sound. Musical, but cold. Like ice breaking on a frozen river. 30 seconds. Perhaps 40 if he runs. But he seems too proud to run. So I will say 20 seconds. She spread her forearms wide. I will try to make his death quick. It is the kindest thing I can offer your species. The journalists left the ship shaken. Their footage spread across Earth within hours. People watched Commander Velia shatter steel. They watched her move with impossible speed in training exercises, fighting holographic opponents that attacked from all directions. They watched her speak with absolute confidence about killing their champion. Fear spread. Protests began. Some people demanded that Do-hyun be replaced. Others demanded that humanity refuse to fight at all. Surrender immediately. Accept whatever fate the Empire offered. A few extremists tried to launch rockets at the Arathi ship. The rockets were destroyed before they left the atmosphere. In Busan, Do-hyun continued to train. He did not watch the footage. Jisoo tried to show him once, thinking he needed to understand what he faced. He shook his head. I know she's stronger, he said simply. You're not afraid? Do-hyun finished wrapping his hands for another sparring session. I am terrified. Every minute of every day. But fear is like pain. You can feel it and still move forward. The moment you let it control you is the moment you lose. Suman heard about the footage from friends. They sent her messages filled with worry and despair. Many of them told her to say goodbye to her father now, while there was still time. That night, she found him in the training hall after everyone else had left. He was practicing alone, moving through forms that his grandfather had taught him. His movements were slow and flowing, like a river finding its way down a mountain. People are saying you'll die in seconds, she said from the doorway. Do-hyun did not stop his practice. People say many things. They say she's killed creatures 10 times stronger than humans, warriors from species that have been fighting for thousands of years. Yes. Suman stepped into the hall. Father, I need you to be honest with me. Do you really believe you can win? Do-hyun finally stopped. He turned to face his daughter. In the dim light, she could see how tired he was. His body was covered in healing bruises. His joints ached. He was not a young man anymore. No, he said quietly. I don't believe I can win. Suman felt her heart crack. Then why are you doing this? Do-hyun walked to her. He took her hands in his, the same hands that had held her as a baby, that had taught her to tie her shoes, that had wiped her tears when her mother died. When your mother was sick, he said, the doctors told us she would die. They gave her 6 months. She lived for 3 years. Do you know why? Suman shook her head, tears falling. Because she refused to accept their timeline. She decided that their prediction was just a guess, and she would make her own future. She fought every single day, not because she believed she would win, but because she believed the fight itself mattered. He squeezed her hands gently. I don't know if I can win, but I know that if I give up, if I don't fight, then humanity loses, for certain. And I know that if I fight with everything I have, something might happen. Something unexpected. The universe is full of surprises. Suman pulled him into a hug. What if the surprise is just you dying? Do-hyun held her tight. Then at least I will die as myself. As a man who didn't quit. And maybe, just maybe, that will mean something to the beings who watch. Maybe they'll see that humans are not easy to break. 4 days remained. Commander Velia gave another interview from her ship. The journalists asked if she had any final message for Earth's champion. She smiled that cold smile again. I have a question for him, actually. A question I will ask when we meet in the arena. She leaned toward the camera. I will ask him, are you really going to try to defeat me? Markler. Unquote. And I will laugh when I ask it, because the answer is so obvious. The clip played on every screen on Earth. In his training hall, Do-hyun heard about it from Jisoo. She's mocking you publicly, Jisoo said. Do-hyun was stretching, preparing for his evening practice. Let her mock. 8. Doesn't it make you angry? He paused, considering the question. Anger is a tool. Used wrong, it makes you stupid. Used right, it gives you strength when your body has none left. He resumed stretching. I will save my anger. When the moment comes, I will use every drop. The final days of training were different. Do-hyun sparred less and practiced more alone. He went through the same movements thousands of times, burning them so deep into his muscles that thought was no longer necessary. He meditated for hours, preparing his mind to accept pain, to accept fear, to accept even death, and continue anyway. Jisoo watched him with something close to wonder. You know what I've realized? She said on the last night, before they traveled to the arena. The committee chose you because they thought you might survive longer than the others. That was the only reason. And now? Jisoo was quiet for a moment. Now I think they chose better than they knew. Everyone else we tested was trying to win. You're the only one who understood the real goal. 2000. Do-hyun raised an eyebrow. To not lose, Jisoo said. There's a difference. Someone trying to win takes risks, attacks, leaves openings. Someone trying not to lose is like a mountain. You can hit it all day. It doesn't care. Do-hyun smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. My grandfather told me something once. He said the greatest warriors in history were not the ones who killed the most enemies. They were the ones who simply refused to fall. He looked out the window at the night sky, where the alien ship hung like a second moon. Tomorrow, the galaxy will see what refusing looks like. 3 days before the duel, Counselor Marek requested a private meeting with Commander Velia. He was the senior intelligence officer on the Arathi mission, responsible for studying enemy species and identifying threats. He had served the Empire for 140 years. In all that time, he had never felt uneasy about a conquest. Until now, Velia received him in her quarters, a large room with windows showing Earth below. She was reviewing footage of her previous victories, watching herself destroy opponents from a dozen different worlds. You seem troubled, Counselor, she said without looking away from the screen. Speak your mind. Marek activated his data tablet. I have been studying the humans more thoroughly. Their champion in particular, but also their species as a whole. There are some findings that concern me. Armin. Velia finally turned. Concerns? About a species that cannot even survive in hard vacuum without artificial assistance? That dies from temperature changes? That needs to sleep for a third of its existence? Yes, Commander. Those very weaknesses are what concern me. Velia's black eyes narrowed. Explain. Marek projected data into the air between them. Charts. Biological readouts. Historical records. Humans evolved on a death world, he began. Their planet has extreme seasons, unstable geology, dangerous predators, and diseases that constantly mutate to kill them. By all logic, they should have died out millions of years ago. Yet they didn't. No. They adapted in unusual ways. Marek highlighted one chart. Their ancestors were not the strongest or fastest creatures. They could not fly. They had no claws or venom, but they developed a hunting method unique in the galaxy. They call it persistence hunting. Velia leaned forward slightly. Go on. They would choose a prey animal and simply follow it. Not chase it. Follow it. When the animal ran, they would track it. When it stopped to rest, they would appear again. They would continue for hours, days, sometimes. It would literally run itself to death trying to escape a predator that never stopped coming. Valia considered this. Interesting, but our duel will last minutes, not days. That brings me to my second concern. Marek pulled up medical data. Human bodies have remarkable damage tolerance. Their bone density increases under stress. Their wounds seal quickly. They can lose significant blood volume and remain functional. He highlighted another section. But most importantly, they have a chemical system called adrenaline. A stimulant? More than that. In moments of extreme danger, their bodies release chemicals that temporarily override their physical limitations. Pain signals are reduced. Strength increases. Focus narrows to the immediate threat. Marek met Velia's eyes. They become, for a short time, more than their normal biology allows. Velia waved dismissively. Many species have combat hormones. Not like this. Marek showed her footage. Human soldiers continuing to fight with wounds that should have killed them. Athletes completing competitions with broken bones. Emergency responders lifting vehicles to save trapped children. Their records show humans fighting for hours with injuries that would incapacitate any Arathi warrior. There is a documented case of a human soldier who was shot through the heart and continued fighting for 14 minutes before his body finally failed. 14 minutes. Commander. With a destroyed heart. Velia was silent. Marek continued. And there is something else. A mental component that their scientists do not fully understand. They call it willpower, or determination, or simply stubbornness. Whatever the name, it allows them to push beyond any physical measurement. Their bodies try to shut down, but their minds refuse to allow it. Are you suggesting I should fear this old man? Marek chose his words carefully. I am suggesting that you should not underestimate him. Every species you have fought before understood when they were beaten. They surrendered, or they died quickly when their bodies failed. Humans may be different. Velia stood and walked to the window. Earth rotated slowly below. Blue oceans and white clouds and green lands where billions of these strange creatures lived. I have killed warriors who could bench press mountains, she said softly. I have killed creatures with natural armor thicker than steel. I have killed opponents who could see the future and still could not dodge my strikes. I know, Commander. And you want me to worry about a species that dies from eating the wrong plant? That can be killed by weather? That fears darkness because their eyes are so weak? Marek put away his tablet. I want you to be prepared. That is all. This champion, Kim Do-hyun, has survived things he should not have. His records show a pattern of refusing to accept defeat, even when defeat is certain. Velia turned back to face him. Then I will break that pattern. I will hit him so hard that his refusal becomes irrelevant. Of course, Commander. But as Marek left her quarters, he could not shake his unease. He had studied many species before conquest. He had identified weaknesses, predicted outcomes, written reports that guided military strategy. He was rarely wrong. Something about humans made his predictions feel unreliable. That night, Velia dreamed. This was unusual. Arathi rarely dreamed. Their sleep was deep and efficient, recovery without distraction. In the dream, she stood in the arena where the duel would take place. Sand beneath her feet, lights blazing above. The old human stood across from her, small and fragile. She struck him. He fell. She struck him again. He fell again. She struck him 100 times, 1,000 times. And every time he fell, but every time, he also rose. His body broke, but he rose. His blood stained the sand, but he rose. His bones jutted through his skin, but he rose. And he kept coming toward her. Not fast, not gracefully, just endlessly, Inevitably, like the tide coming in, Velia woke before dawn, her hands shaking. She did not tell anyone about the dream. On the Arathi ship, preparations continued. The arena was constructed in a neutral space station. Broadcast equipment tested and calibrated. Representatives from 300 star systems would watch. This was entertainment for the galaxy. Another primitive species being taught its place. Commander Velia gave a final interview. "I have studied human history," she said. "They are a violent species. They fight each other constantly. Wars, murders, petty conflicts over resources and beliefs. One might think this would make them dangerous." The interviewer, an Arathi journalist, nodded. "But it doesn't?" Velia smiled. "They waste their violence on each other. They have never faced a true external threat. They do not know how to unite, how to focus, how to channel their aggression effectively. Their champion is a perfect example. He spent his life teaching children to punch. This is not a warrior. This is a man playing at warrior. Ruve. 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 What do you think he will do when he faces you?" Velia's smile widened. "I think he will realize, in the first second, that everything he knows is useless. I think he will feel despair. And then, I think he will die." Far below, on Earth, Do-hyun was saying goodbye. The children from his training hall gathered for one last class. Their parents watched from the sides, many of them crying. These were the families who had trusted him with their children for years. Now they were watching him leave, probably forever. Do-hyun knelt on the wooden floor, the same floor where he had taught thousands of lessons. "I want to tell you something important," he said to the children. "Something I hope you remember." The children listened. They were young, but they understood the weight of the moment. Being strong is not about muscles. It is not about winning fights. Being strong is about standing up when everything inside you wants to stay down. He looked at each child in turn. "I don't know if I will win tomorrow, but I know that I will stand up. Every time I fall, I will stand up. And that is what I want you to remember. That is what being strong really means." One small boy, barely 7 years old, raised his hand. "Teacher, are you scared?" Do-hyun smiled. "Very scared." Do-hyun. Very, very, very scared. "But you're going anyway?" "Yes." "Why?" Do-hyun thought of his grandfather, who had survived war and famine and loss. He thought of his wife, who had smiled even at the end. He thought of his daughter, who would have to live in whatever world came after tomorrow. "Because some things matter more than being scared," he said. "Some things matter more than living. And protecting the people you love is one of those things." He bowed to the children, and they bowed back. Tomorrow, the universe would learn what humans were made of. Tomorrow, Commander Velia would discover that her studies had missed something crucial. Humans did not fight to win. They fought because they had decided that losing was unacceptable. And there was no force in the galaxy more dangerous than a creature that simply refused to stop. The arena was built on a space station halfway between Earth and the Arathi ship. It was circular, 100 meters across, with a floor of fine white sand. Seats rose in tiers around it, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Their shapes were strange and varied. Some had wings. Some had too many eyes. Some were barely visible, existing partly in dimensions humans could not perceive. All of them had come to watch humanity fall. Do-hyun arrived in a small shuttle with Jisoo and Sumin. He wore simple white training clothes, the same ones he wore when teaching children in Busan. He carried nothing. The rules allowed no weapons, no armor, no enhancements of any kind. Sumin held his arm as they walked through the station corridors. Her face was pale, her grip tight. "Father," she whispered, "you don't have to do this. We could leave, find somewhere to hide." Do-hyun patted her hand. "Hide where?" "The galaxy is their territory. Earth is all we have." He stopped and faced her. And even if we could hide, what kind of life would that be? Running forever? Living in fear? Jisoo spoke up. The broadcast is about to begin. 300 star systems. 20 billion sentient beings watching. Good, Do-hyun said. Let them watch. They entered the arena level. The noise hit them immediately. A roar of alien voices speaking languages no human had ever heard. The air smelled strange, filtered through systems designed for species that breathed different atmospheres. And then Do-hyun saw her. Commander Valia stood at the center of the arena, waiting. She was taller than he had expected. Nearly 2.5 meters of violet skin and perfect muscle. Her 4 arms hung, relaxed at her sides. Her black eyes found him across the distance. She smiled. Do-hyun walked onto the sand. Each step felt heavier than the last. The sand shifted beneath his feet. Soft and fine. He could feel his heart beating. Fast, but steady. His lungs filled with air that was slightly too cold, slightly too thin. He stopped 10 meters from Velia. The crowd fell silent. The entire galaxy held its breath. An announcer's voice echoed through the arena, speaking in a language that was automatically translated for every listener. This duel will determine the fate of Earth. The rules are simple. No weapons. No outside assistance. The match ends when one fighter surrenders or can no longer continue. Velia raised her 4 arms in a formal salute, a gesture of respect used in Arathi tradition. It looked almost mocking on her. Human, she said, her voice carrying across the sand. Are you truly going to try to defeat me? She laughed. The sound filled the arena. Rich and confident and cruel. It was the laugh of someone who had never experienced doubt. Never tasted failure. Never wondered if she was enough. Do-hyun looked at her. He was a small man, old by human standards, unremarkable in every way that the galaxy measured strength. His body was covered in healing bruises from training. His joints ached. His muscles were tired, but his eyes were calm. We'll see, he said. The duel began. Velia moved first. She crossed the 10 meters between them in less than a second, her 4 arms striking simultaneously. The first blow caught Do-hyun in the chest. The second hit his shoulder. The third and fourth followed before he could even register the pain. He flew backward, crashing into the sand. The impact drove the air from his lungs. He heard something crack in his ribs. In the stands, Suman screamed. On Earth, billions of people watched in horror as their champion hit the ground in the first second of the fight. Velia walked toward him slowly. I expected more. Your species is even weaker than I thought. Do-hyun pushed himself up. His chest burned. Breathing hurt. But he got to his feet. Velia struck again. Another blur of motion. Another impact that should have ended any fight. Do-hyun blocked one arm, but the other 3 found their targets. He went down again, and again, he stood. Interesting, Velia said. You can still move. Let's see for how long. The next 3 minutes were a massacre. Velia hit him with strikes that would have killed most species instantly. She broke his left arm at the elbow. She cracked his jaw. She opened cuts on his face that sent blood streaming down his white clothes, turning them red. The crowd began to cheer, sensing the quick victory they had expected. But something was wrong. Do-hyun would not stay down. Every time Velia knocked him to the sand, he rose. His movements were slower, damaged. His breathing was ragged. Blood dripped from his face and pooled beneath him. But he kept standing. Counselor Merrick, watching from the command ship, leaned forward in his seat. His earlier unease returned, stronger now. Commander, he whispered to himself. But Velia did not finish him quickly. She was playing with him, showing off for the galaxy, demonstrating the absolute superiority of the Arathi Empire. Each strike was calculated to cause pain without immediate death. She wanted the humans watching to understand exactly how helpless they were. She did not notice that her breathing was becoming slightly faster. She did not notice that her movements were losing their perfect efficiency. She did not notice that Kim Do-hyun, broken and bleeding, was still watching her with those calm eyes. On Earth, the initial despair was shifting. People who had covered their eyes were looking again. Children who had been crying were watching with strange expressions. Their champion was losing. That was obvious. But he wasn't giving up. Every time he fell, he rose. Every time she hit him, he came back for more. It was not victory, but it was something. At the 5-minute mark, Valia stepped back to catch her breath. She had never fought this long before. Her previous duels had ended in seconds or minutes. This was supposed to be the same. "Why do you keep standing?" she asked, genuinely curious now. Do-hyun spat blood onto the sand. His left arm hung useless at his side. His face was swollen beyond recognition. When he spoke, his words were slurred by his broken jaw. "Because I haven't lost yet. You can barely stand. You can barely see. Your body is destroyed. But I'm standing." Valia's smile flickered. Just for a moment, she felt something she had never felt in combat before. Uncertainty. She attacked again, but this time, there was less precision. Her fourth blow missed entirely. Do-hyun moved, just slightly. Just enough. It was not dodging. It was not defense. It was simply not being in exactly the wrong place. And then he hit back. His right hand, the only limb still fully functional, shot forward in a simple punch. It was slow, compared to her speed. It was weak, compared to her strength. But she wasn't expecting it. And it landed. The impact was nothing to an Arathi warrior. Less than nothing. A tap from a child. But the crowd fell silent. In 14 duels across 7 star systems, Commander Valia had never been touched. Not once. Not ever. She stared at the human in front of her. This broken, bleeding creature that should have been dead 10 times over. And for the first time in her life, she felt the beginning of fear. Do-hyun saw it in her eyes. He couldn't speak anymore. His jaw had swollen shut. But he managed something like a smile through the blood and bruises. The message was clear. "I touched you. I'm still here. And I'm not stopping until one of us can't move anymore." In the command ship, Counselor Marek was already writing a revised assessment. His earlier concerns had been wrong. He had underestimated the danger. 20 minutes into the duel, the medical observers requested to stop the match. They were a team of doctors from multiple species, chosen for their neutrality. They had watched countless battles and knew when a fighter was finished. Kim Do-hyun was finished. By every medical measure, he should be unconscious or dead. His left arm was broken in 2 places. 3 ribs were cracked. His face was so swollen that his eyes were nearly shut. Internal bleeding had begun in his abdomen. The human delegation refused to stop the match. "Those were his instructions," Jisoo said, her voice steady despite the tears running down her face. "He told us before we arrived. Unless he surrenders himself, we don't stop it. No matter what." No. The medical team protested. This was not sport. This was execution. But the rules were clear. Only the fighter or their official representatives could call a surrender. And the representatives had refused. In the arena, Valia circled her opponent. She was breathing hard now, harder than she had ever breathed in combat. Her muscles ached with an unfamiliar burn. She had thrown hundreds of strikes, enough to destroy a small building. The human was still standing. "Yield," she commanded. Her voice echoed across the silent arena. "I do not enjoy this. You have fought well for your species. Yield now, and I will grant you a quick death." Do-hyun could not speak. His jaw was locked, swollen shut. But he shook his head slowly. A tiny movement that cost him enormous pain. "No." Valia struck him again. A kick to his good leg that should have shattered bone. He went down. He lay on the sand for 3 seconds. 4 seconds. 5 seconds. Then he began to rise. In the stands, The alien spectators were no longer cheering. The celebration had died somewhere around the 10-minute mark, replaced by something else. Confusion, discomfort, and for some, a growing horror. They had come to watch a quick conquest. Instead, they were watching something they had never seen before. A creature that simply would not die. Counselor Marek had left his seat. He was standing at the viewport of the command ship, watching the arena feed on a large screen. His hands were clasped behind his back to hide their trembling. "End it," he said quietly to no one. "Just end it." But Velia could not end it. Not quickly. Not cleanly. Every time she struck a killing blow, the human moved just enough to change a fatal impact into a damaging one. Every time she tried to crush his throat or snap his neck, he turned his body in ways that absorbed the force. It was not skill anymore. His conscious mind had stopped directing his movements long ago. This was something deeper. 30 years of training burned into muscle and bone. His body was protecting itself by instinct, doing things he could not have done on purpose. And he kept getting up. At 30 minutes, Velia made a mistake. She overextended a strike, putting too much force into a blow that missed. Do-hyun, operating on pure instinct, redirected her momentum. She stumbled. For 1 second, she was off balance. He hit her knee. It was a weak hit. His good hand was nearly as damaged as the rest of him now, but it was precise. It targeted the joint exactly where Erythi anatomy was weakest. Velia felt pain. Real pain. Not damage, not yet, but the warning of damage to come. She retreated 3 steps. She had never retreated in combat before. On Earth, something was happening. People who had been watching in despair were standing up. They were calling their neighbors, their friends, their families. "Watch this. You need to see this." The human was dying. Everyone could see that. He was broken, bloody, barely recognizable as the man who had entered the arena. But he was still fighting, still standing, still refusing to accept what everyone knew was inevitable. In the arena seats, Suman was holding Jisoo's hand so tightly that both of them had lost feeling in their fingers. She could not look away from her father. "How is he doing this?" Jisoo whispered. Suman thought of all the mornings she had watched him train alone, before dawn, when no one else was awake. She thought of the way he practiced the same movement 10,000 times until it was perfect. She thought of the quiet discipline that defined his entire life. "He decided," she said. "He decided a long time ago that he would never give up. And now his body is just following the decision." 40 minutes. Velia was exhausted. She was not used to this. Her species did not have the endurance adaptations that humans had evolved. Her muscles were designed for explosive power, not sustained effort. Her respiratory system was efficient but not infinite. She was slowing down, Do-hyun noticed. Some small part of his brain, the part that had survived 30 years of combat training, registered that his opponent was weakening. He began to advance, not quickly. He could not move quickly anymore. His right leg was the only limb that still worked properly, and even that was damaged. But he moved forward. 1 step, another step, another. Velia struck him. He fell. He rose. He advanced. She struck him again. He fell. He rose. He advanced. The alien spectators began to whisper. "What is this? What are we watching? This is not how combat works." But they could not look away. At 50 minutes, Velia's 4th arm cramped. The muscle seized. A pain she had never experienced before. She had never fought long enough for her muscles to fail from exhaustion. Do-hyun saw the opening. His body, running on pure instinct, took advantage. He threw himself forward in a tackle that should have been impossible given his injuries. He wrapped his broken arm around her cramping limb and twisted. Velia screamed. It was not a serious injury. A sprain, perhaps. Nothing permanent. But it was damage. Real damage. She threw him off with her remaining arms, sending him crashing to the sand. He did not move for long seconds, but then he began to rise again. "What are you?" Velia shouted. There was something in her voice now that had never been there before. "What are you?" Tand. Do-hun could not answer. He could barely see anymore. His world had narrowed to a small tunnel of vision, surrounded by darkness. He could not feel most of his body. Pain had exceeded the limits his nervous system could process. But he could still stand. So he stood. On the command ship, Counselor Merrick was dictating urgent messages to the Empire's military command. Recommend immediate reassessment of human threat level. Their physiology contains hidden advantages, not apparent in standard analysis. Psychological resistance exceeds any documented species. Request additional intelligence gathering before any future military engagement. He did not know if anyone was listening. He did not know if it would matter. In the arena, Commander Velia faced the truth she had never imagined. She was going to lose, not because the human was stronger, not because he was faster, not because he had better technique or superior biology. She was going to lose because she had finite resources and he had infinite will. She would run out of strength before he ran out of determination. That was not supposed to be possible, but here it was, happening in front of the entire galaxy. Velia looked at the broken thing standing before her, the creature that should have died 100 times over, and she understood something for the first time. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. 1 hour and 17 minutes. The duel had lasted longer than any combat in recorded galactic history. The cameras had not stopped broadcasting. 20 billion beings across 300 star systems watched in silence that had long ago replaced cheering or commentary. The sand of the arena was more red than white now. Commander Velia stood in the center, her forearms trembling. Her legs shook with exhaustion. Her breathing came in ragged gasps that her species was not designed to make. Muscles that had never known fatigue. Burned with accumulated damage. She had never felt so tired. She had never known it was possible to feel this way. Across from her, Kim Do-hyun remained standing. This fact defied all logic. His body was destroyed. Both arms were broken. His ribs had punctured something internal. Blood ran continuously from wounds that covered every part of him. His face was unrecognizable, swollen and purple and torn, but he was standing. His eyes, nearly swollen shut, still found her through the narrow slits remaining. There was no hatred in them. No fear. Only a calm, absolute determination that transcended anything Velia had ever encountered. She attacked. Her movements were slow now, slower than any Arathi warrior should ever move. Do-hyun redirected her force. It was not a conscious technique. His brain had stopped directing his movements long ago. This was muscle memory so deep it had become reflex. 30 years of practice expressing itself through a body that had nothing left to give. Velia stumbled. He hit her. A simple strike to her center. The same movement he had taught children in Busan. The most basic punch in any martial art. His hand was broken. His arm barely functional. But the punch landed. Velia felt something crack. Not bone. Something deeper. Her confidence, perhaps. Her certainty that she was invincible. She attacked again. Wilder now. Less precise. Fear was doing what no opponent had ever managed to do before. It was making her stupid. Do-hyun's body found the rhythm. Not dodging. Not blocking. Just moving with her attacks. Flowing around them like water finding the path of least resistance. And every time she missed, every time her exhausted body overextended, he countered. Small hits. Weak hits. Nothing that would damage a healthy Arathi warrior. But she was not healthy anymore. And the hits accumulated. In the stands, Suman was praying. She did not know to whom. She had never been religious. But she prayed anyway, begging any power that might listen to let her father survive. Lieutenant Jisoo was not praying. She was recording everything, documenting the impossible thing happening in front of her. History was being made. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. At 1 hour and 14 minutes, Velia's right legs gave out. She caught herself with her arms, pushed herself back up. Her movements were desperate now. Nothing like the elegant warrior who had entered the arena. Do-hyun advanced. Step by painful step. Each movement cost him more than she could imagine. But he did not stop. Velia threw everything she had left into a final attack. All 4 arms, all her remaining strength, focused into strikes designed to end this nightmare. Do-hyun did not try to block. He could not have blocked if he wanted to. Instead, he moved into the attack. Her strikes hit him, but he was too close now for them to have full force. His forehead connected with her face. A headbutt. The most primitive attack in any fighting style. Velia's head snapped back. Her vision went white for a moment. When it cleared, she was falling. She hit the sand on her knees. She tried to rise. Her body refused. Do-hyun stood over her. He could barely stand himself. His good leg was failing. Blood loss was making his vision dim. He had perhaps seconds of consciousness left, but he was standing, and she was kneeling. The arena was absolutely silent. No one breathed. No one moved. The entire galaxy waited. Velia looked up at the human. This broken, bleeding creature that should have died 100 times. This insignificant being from a primitive world. He had done what no one in 10,000 years had accomplished. He had defeated her. I yield. Her voice was quiet, barely a whisper. Louder, someone shouted from the crowd. Say it so everyone can hear. Velia closed her black eyes. When she opened them, there was something new in their depths. Not just exhaustion or pain, respect. I yield, she said, loud enough for the entire arena to hear. The words echoed across 300 star systems. 20 billion beings heard them. The impossible had happened. Humanity had won. On Earth, the silence held for 3 heartbeats. Then the world exploded with cheering. People ran into the streets, screaming and crying and embracing strangers. A species that had been told it was weak, primitive, insignificant, had just proven something different. In the arena, Do-hyun's legs finally gave out. He collapsed into the sand, unconscious before he hit the ground. Medical teams rushed in. Human and alien doctors worked together, their rivalry forgotten in the face of saving the warrior who had changed everything. They found injuries that should have been fatal. They found a body that should have stopped functioning long ago. But his heart was still beating. His lungs were still breathing. Kim Do-hyun, retired soldier and martial arts teacher, was alive. Suman broke through the security barriers and ran to her father. She held his broken hand while the doctors worked, whispering the same words over and over. You did it, father. You did it. Stay with me. Stay with me. He could not hear her. But somehow, his fingers tightened around hers. Commander Velia sat in the sand where she had fallen. She made no move to leave. Counselor Marek approached her carefully. Commander, we should return to the ship. Velia did not respond immediately. She was watching the medical team work on the human, watching his daughter hold his hand. I was wrong about them, she said finally. We were all wrong. They are stronger than we thought. Velia shook her head slowly. They are not stronger. They are not faster. They are not more skilled. She looked at Marek with ancient, exhausted eyes. They are simply not finished. They are a species still becoming something, still growing, still pushing past their limits. She stood, her body screaming with pain. And I think the galaxy should be grateful that they still choose to be kind. Because if they ever decide not to be, nothing will stop them. The Arathi Empire withdrew its claim on Earth. More surprisingly, they requested a formal alliance. The galaxy had watched a human refuse to die. They had seen what persistence looked like, what determination meant, and they were afraid. 4 months later, Kim Do-hyun returned to his training hall. His body was covered in scars that would never fade. His left arm would never work quite right again, but he could walk and teach and live. The children were waiting for him. They had grown during his absence. Some had started training with other teachers, continuing what he had taught them. But they came back for his first class. Do-hyun knelt on the wooden floor, the same floor where he had taught thousands of lessons. The room was quiet. "Teacher." The small boy who had asked if he was scared spoke up. "Were you scared during the fight?" Do-hyun smiled. The expression pulled at scars on his face. "Every moment. But you won. I survived." Winning and surviving are different things. He looked at each child in turn. But the secret is the same. You feel the fear. You feel the pain. And then you decide that they don't get to make your choices for you. You decide what you do. Not your fear. Not your pain. You. Sumin watched from the doorway. Lieutenant Jisoo stood beside her, having become something like a friend during the long months of recovery. "He's the same," Jisoo said quietly. Sumin shook her head. "No. He's more. He proved something to himself. To all of us." She paused. "He proved that we're not finished yet. That we can always be more than we are." Across the stars, in military academies and war colleges of 100 species, new doctrine was being written. New warnings, new guidelines. Do not engage humans in extended combat. They do not know when to stop. Do not attempt to break their spirits. Their spirits do not break. Do not assume they are finished. No matter how damaged they appear, they are never finished. And somewhere in Busan, in a small training hall that smelled of old wood and sweat and determination, an old man taught children how to punch. The galaxy would remember his name, but he preferred it this way. Simple, quiet, teaching the next generation the same lesson he had learned from his grandfather. The same lesson his wife had taught him in her final years. The same lesson the universe had finally witnessed. You get knocked down. You get up, you get knocked down again. You get up again, and you keep getting up until there's no one left to knock you down. That was the human way. That was the only way.